Good evening, folks. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. Well, thanks for coming. We want to be respectful of your time. My name is Jim Wendt. I'm the planning director for the town. I'm pleased to be joined this evening by Assistant Planning Director Emmeline Harrigan and Economic Development Director Mark Barnhart in the back. He's going to be helping us staff. I will let our lead consultant introduce the consulting team later on, but thank you. We know that you have a lot of competing interests, things to compete for your time and attention, so we're pleased to have you here, and thank you for joining us and sharing your time with us tonight. Quick housekeeping, out this door or that door right over my left shoulder are the bathrooms. If anybody needs the restroom, that's where you will find them. We're going to do a brief presentation to kind of orient you on where we've been and where that work has led us, and then you will then be turned loose, but more on that going forward. So we can go to jump to the first slide. Oop. There we go. So why do a POCD? POCD, Plan of Conservation and Development. You've all read our material that brought you here this evening. By state statute, we're required to update this plan every 10 years. It was last updated in 2016. It's really our local statement of policy and goals for development, the physical and economic development of the town, including all the items in that bullet point: housing, transportation, development areas, conservation, and so forth. We are a Long Island Sound adjacent community, so that also requires us, the plan, to give consideration to the resources of Long Island Sound. Our goal, after we collect feedback this evening, our next steps will be to actually draft a plan document that will come forth for public hearing that needs to be ultimately reviewed by the Board of Selectmen and ultimately adopted by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So as I was quoted in several places, basically our POCD is our goal and policy document. And I think we have, and you all have told us in past engagements, what you all love about the town. I think we have a pretty good handle. And what we're trying to do is balance our desire to preserve and enhance those community characteristics that everybody loves with the need to identify opportunities for additional economic growth. So those are very much competing interests that we need to try to find the sweet spot. And so we welcome your input and your thoughts tonight in that effort. So as this slide says, it's a goal and policy document. It's not a set of regulations. What's important for you to know is in this whole overall process, we are also engaged in a comprehensive review of our zoning regulations. So once we have an adopted plan, the next step is to take a look at our zoning regulations and direct those regulations towards implementation of the goals and policies that we ultimately adopt in that plan. So that's all I'm going to say for now. I'm going to introduce Emmeline Harrigan, who is going to walk you through the public engagement that we've done thus far, and then she's going to introduce our consulting team. So again, thank you for being here, and we look forward to your feedback this evening.
Jim is differently sized than I am, so I have to bring the mic down. So thank you so much again for coming this evening. We kind of feel like it's been a long road to get here. We started public engagement really back in 2018, quite a while ago. Next slide, please. So we actually have done different engagement planning documents over time that we had hoped to incorporate into the Plan of Conservation and Development update, including a couple of safety studies, such as the Black Rock Turnpike Safety Study and the Post Road Circle Safety Study. There's also been departments that have been working on planning documents at the same time that we've been kind of doing outreach, such as the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And we've had a couple of very focused outreach workshops over time, including those targeted towards resiliency and how Fairfield can adapt to a changing climate. So again, we started back in 2018. We really ramped up to a really a series of, if you want to go to the next slide, a series of, sorry, this was one of our first pop-up engagements, which was the Harvest Festival in 2018. And then, you know, really kind of where we did our last engagement, if you go to the next slide, is the winter workshops, which were done right before the close of the pandemic. So we did those in late January, early February. The pandemic closed everything down in March. And so the POCD update kind of took a giant pause. Thanks to ARPA funds, we were able to hire a consultant to assist us to re-engage the community. We felt like the winter workshops were extraordinarily well attended. People had a really great time talking about what their goals for Fairfield were, but we really felt like the pandemic was life-changing for a lot of people in terms of understanding whether or not Fairfield's resources maybe need to adapt a little bit based on their own personal experiences. So we are thankful that we've engaged FHI to help us in the update process. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Adam to kind of go through what their firm has helped us to accomplish so far and where we'd like to go with this workshop this evening.
So thank you very much. My name is Adam Texa, and I'm a planner and urban designer with FHI Studio. And as Emmeline noted, we've been hired to sort of bring the plan to its completion. But one of the things we want to be really clear about is all the hard work that went into the beginning part of this process hasn't been lost. But coming out of the pandemic, one of the things that we felt very strongly is we need to sort of re-engage the community and make sure that. Oh, also talking into that mic. Yep. Re-engage all of you to make sure that the values and the things that you sort of expressed pre-pandemic still held, and that to get a little bit more information about sort of the direction for the plan. So if we go to that, I'm going to give about hopefully not a full 20-minute presentation, and then we'll break into the open house. So if you go to the next slide. One of the things that we did at the beginning of our work is we dug through all of the previous planning efforts that had sort of happened to date, including the 2017 POCD. So we incorporated recommendations from that were still valid, that hadn't yet been achieved. But we also looked at a lot of other documents that had a lot of other public engagement processes that we thought were really important. So many of you, I'm sure, took our little, some people called it a survey. We like to call it a virtual workshop because we think it's a little bit better than what SurveyMonkey puts out there. And we asked you what some of your top priorities were going forward and what some of the kind of core strengths of Fairfield were. And as you can see in the font's a little light, and I apologize, I also have bad eyes, and the lighting here makes it a little difficult to see, but we'll make this available online, is, the open spaces, the public beaches, the quality and the diversity of the community, the small town feel. Those were things that people really felt were strong in Fairfield. Going forward, though, there were some weaknesses that people felt. There was some feeling like there's been some wrong-sized development that's happened, that there is an affordable housing issue in Fairfield that's really changing the character of the community, and that traffic and congestion were something, so much better. Yeah, we got a little clap. Thank you very much to the lights. Yeah. So, we wanted to take that into consideration as well. So if you go forward a slide. The other thing that we ask people is sort of what are the priorities for investment? Where should Fairfield be prioritizing things? And these are people's first, second, and third priorities sort of combined together. And, focusing on natural resources, sustainability, and the residential areas really came out as some of those top three priorities for people. But good governance and walking and biking and community facilities were also something that people really cared a lot about. And that's not to say that we're not addressing all of these issues, but it is important to pay attention to what your priorities are and what people see priorities as. So go to the next. We also asked about the impacts of COVID. How had it changed people's behaviors? Some people talked about avoiding gyms and crowded indoor spaces, even going forward, which I think certainly is something people are taking into consideration. People are taking the train less, right? People are staying in Fairfield more during the week, doing a little bit more work from home. I think as a society, we're still trying to figure out exactly where that boundary is going to be, and it's going to change for everybody, but that's going to have big impacts that we're not going to know exactly right now what they're going to be, but we've got to kind of be paying attention to them. And you know, other things was, you know, people wanting more open air transportation, more outdoor dining spaces, places for to support remote work. Right? When you're working from home, every once in a while, you still got to go maybe do some printing. You still maybe want to go pick up some coffee. You still need a place to maybe meet with some people. That may change the demand for different land uses in Fairfield. So some of the top level findings that we came out of this, and I've sort of organized these around different categories. So in environment and natural resources, again, just that parks, beaches, and open spaces are really core to what makes Fairfield Fairfield. We've heard that a lot. And that protecting those natural resources is a real top priority. When it comes to resiliency, so this is resiliency to climate change, this is a resiliency to a changing environment, there's a lot of concern for people along the coastline, right? That makes sense. It's a national issue, but it's something that Fairfield has to deal with very immediately, right? There are people in Fairfield who really are going to experience this and have experienced some of these issues, and that came out in our survey. And then just again, that those parks and beaches and open spaces were an important part of that resiliency system. In terms of the economy, people felt really strongly that the Fairfield economy needed to be sustainable economic growth, that shouldn't come at the expense of that charm and sort of small town feel. And we know that that is a really difficult dynamic to balance, right? Sort of maintaining the qualities that so many people care about in Fairfield, that charm, that small town feel, while balancing the need for economic growth into supporting, you know, your population. And also that, you know, really is going forward, Fairfield should continue to support those sort of unique local businesses that cater to Fairfield's diverse community. In housing, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in the different breakout boards, but there's a real need to balance this desire to maintain community character, right? To maintain a lot of these neighborhoods, maintain a lot of these places that people really care about, while ensuring there's access to affordable housing. And I'm sure when we break out into the different things, there's going to be lots of conversation that we have around this issue, but we know that there's this sort of circular conversation that's going on around a lot of people desiring more affordable housing. A lot of people seeing the lack of access to affordable housing as a threat to something that they care a lot about in their community, and making sure that Fairfield remains a more, you know, a diverse community. At the same time, not wanting to just go whole hog and let anything happen in the name of affordable housing. And that there's a desire to protect and maintain a lot of legacy neighborhoods and a lot of legacy character. So we know that that's a tension here in Fairfield. When it comes to connectivity and mobility, we heard that, you know, traffic conditions and parking and pedestrian bike infrastructure really needs a lot of improvement. Sort of up and down the system, there's need for improvement. It doesn't matter if you're driving, you're walking, you're biking. I don't know. I don't think anybody's on a unicycle these days, but you know that the environment needs more support, and that is also coming along with all the changes in traffic patterns and mobility that happened because of COVID. The other thing that we heard in terms of community facilities, and we know that the Parks Master Plan has just come out, and a lot of people have been participating in that, but that there's a need to sort of update the community facilities, and there needs to be a sort of a comprehensive approach to updating that. So that's a lot. I hope that some of that is reflected, or some of your ideas were reflected in that summary. That is not everything. And I want to make sure that you all know that we read all the comments that came in as part of the online workshop. We're incorporating that. You'll see your quotes out here around to sort of illustrate some of the ideas that we've heard. If we go forward, the way that we wanted to try to honor that is we wanted to try to create a plan that was structured around some vision statements, some things that Fairfield, we heard, was aspiring to become. And so the boards that you'll see around here are all organized around these themes. The first one is Fairfield will be a resilient community. Fairfield will be an environmentally rooted community. Fairfield will be a community that is home to all. Fairfield will be a sustainably prosperous community. Fairfield will be an interconnected community. And Fairfield will be a community where people come together. We think those vision statements taken together encapsulate the vision that a lot of people had and have expressed to us and to Jim and Emmeline in previous workshops about what should the town be aspiring to? What should you all be aspiring to? We've also put together some goals. These are a little bit more detailed. I'm not going to read all of them now, partly because I can't even read them from here. They're on that board back there so that you can read them. We're asking you to evaluate them, tell us whether or not they reflect your vision for Fairfield, whether they accurately capture your ideas about what you want to achieve over the next 10 years. Going forward. And the plan is really going to be structured around this idea that those vision statements and those more concrete goals will be working together to guide the actions of the town of Fairfield. And that supporting that are a series of strategies and actions that can be taken to help move the town forward on that path towards that vision and those goals. So every board you see around here will have a strategy. It'll be in dark blue with white font. That's kind of the direction that you're trying to go, the thing you're trying to achieve, a little bit more concrete than a goal. And then the actions are very specific things that you can do to help achieve those strategies. So each vision statement has several strategies, and each strategy has several goals. And one of the things that we're going to be asking you all to do today is to see if those goals and strategies and those goals and strategies and actions are right. Do they align with what you think the town should be doing? And if you think they shouldn't be doing that, we want you to tell us that. But we also want you to suggest ideas. If there are other things that we're missing, if there are projects or policies that you think the town should be pursuing in order to achieve those visions, let us know, okay? So I just want to take a minute, and I know this is a big group, but I just want to see if anybody has any questions about what I presented. There's going to be a lot more opportunity to talk with the team, but just any clarifying questions before we sort of break out into groups. Yeah.
So is there any differentiation between suburban planning and urban planning? Because we're a town.
Yes.
One. Two, do you have any data points that you can refer to? You repeatedly said everybody wants more affordable housing. Everybody wants more affordable housing. But where is that coming from? Is there a quantitative?
It's a great question. So I have my master's in regional and urban planning. Okay, our firm does regional and urban planning. It's very similar, the suburban and urban planning. To the second question, what are the data points? So there were the winter workshops that happened, there were the pop-ups that happened, and then we had a virtual workshop that went out that we had more than 300 people respond to. They were able to identify their priorities. They were able to talk about the things that they cared about. You were given an opportunity to give not just select an answer, but select an answer and tell us why that's important to you. And we read all of that and we tabulated all of that. And that's how we got to these conclusions. And we'll be incorporating all of that into the final document. Back there and then right here. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But following up on the question, is there any way we can actually see the quantitative results of those surveys? How many people wanted this as opposed to that?
Yeah, actually, so if we go back a little bit, and there will be some, that will be incorporated into the document when we put back, but if you go back, so there are tabulations in all of this that we will be presenting with this that talk about, for example, at least 18% of the entire town, when we did this, had identified natural resources as either their first, second, or third priority. So that'll be incorporated into the document. Yeah.
And I just wanted to add that state statute dictates what we need to discuss within our plan of conservation and development. And housing is one of the categories that we have to discuss. In particular, housing that accommodates our aging population. So it is a requirement within the POCD when we do the update that we talk about housing for diverse populations.
Yeah.
Am I correct that approximately 4.5% of Fairfield, the town of Fairfield, is zoned for commercial uses, or was that a misinterpretation?
So what I'd like to do is hold off on that. That's actually addressed in one of the boards around here, and we'll get into the specifics of this. I just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page about sort of the general structure and the approach, and then we'll break out into some of the discussions. It's a great question, though. I've got one back there. Yeah.
Explain what the timeframe is for further public input, and this might be for anyone as well as what the next steps are to get the POCD approved and replacing the old POCD.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to go through a process here of listening to all of you. We're going to get all of your input on this. We're going to then process through that, and then we will release a draft of the POCD. And then that has to go through the adoption process, and Jim and Emmeline can talk a little bit more about what that's going to look like. But in that release of the draft, everybody will have an opportunity to provide comment on that as well. Here and then there. Yeah. 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 Yeah, I mean, the topics that we're talking about here are all part of the requirements that we really need to focus on as part of the POCD. And we can get into that again in the specific stations about the statutory requirements. Thank you very, very much. Yeah.
Yeah, in the thought around maintaining character
Yeah.
in neighborhoods, was it only in the context of affordable housing, or was it also, would you also consider less affordable housing in places like the beach area that used to be affordable and is now the opposite?
The expensive? Yeah.
And larger homes, probably larger coverage of property.
Yeah, I mean, I think we really recognize that that's a tension here. A tension here, right? Is Fairfield's a very desirable community. It continues to grow. It continues to attract people. And there is, so when we get to it, there are recommendations under a community that is home for all, where we talk about some of the specific locations where we're talking about changes in zoning to support, different types of development as we go forward. So it's not all about preservation in that way. But if you have thoughts about areas where, you'd like different approaches, talk to us in that section.
It was just an observation.
Totally.
We talk about character just in terms of affordable housing, but not in terms of larger homes.
Yeah, it's not just about affordability, but we know that what I would say is what we've heard is that's where a lot of the tension that we've been hearing sort of comes up, is around this question of people. There are a lot of people who feel like affordable housing would be really great. And there's a lot of people who are scared about some of the changes that might have to happen in order to accommodate. And when I talk about affordable housing, I apologize. I'm not talking just about 830-G. Like, I'm not just talking about capital A affordable housing. I'm just talking about housing that's accessible up and down the market, including housing that's being provided by the market that's not deed restricted. Okay. Behind you and then in front, yeah.
Do you have any information on how well you've done the last POCD?
So I don't want to get into that in detail here, but we can talk about that in some of the breakout sessions. I don't have any of that in front of me right here.
I thought I heard the comment, the availability of these materials, if you could just restate that.
Yeah, we'll be able to put all of this online so that you can see these presentations, and all of the drafts will be published online for people. Okay. So why don't we go forward?
Will there be other opportunities to provide feedback other than this evening? My wheels grind a little slowly and there's a lot to digest.
Yes, there will be, and so if we go forward, there will be, and like I said, there's going to be a whole draft that comes out. This is not the last opportunity to provide feedback. So if we go forward, so the way that this is structured here, and this is really important, we wanted to give everybody an opportunity to have conversations with the people who are going to be writing and working on the various sections of this plan. Okay, I'm not going to be doing all the writing. I'm doing some of it. I'm the project manager here, but you've got a whole team of consultants and staff at the town who are helping to develop the ideas. And we wanted to give all of you an opportunity to talk with them. So what we've got here are various stations that you can go around to in whatever order that you see fit. And in fact, you know, try to spread yourself out a little bit. Don't try to overwhelm anybody too much. What we've got back there by Emmeline is just the community goals. So that's a station where you can stick little dots on each of the goals and tell us whether or not they align with your vision for Fairfield. People have already started to put little sticky notes up there suggesting modifications or changes. Jim's going to be back staffing a community that's home for all. There are actually 2 boards back there. That's for people who are interested in some of those housing questions. That's where you're going to want to be going. If you go to a sustainably prosperous community, Emmeline and Mark are going to be back at that board to help staff it. Or Emmeline's going to be, I guess, at a community that's home for all. Mark's going to be back at a sustainably prosperous community. David and Victoria are going to be at a resilient community. They're with David. I'm so sorry. Resilient Land and Water. Got it. They're with Resilient Land and Water. They are our sub-consultants on this project and can answer all of your questions around that topic. Parker's going to be over at an interconnected community for people who are interested in some of the bicycle, pedestrian, the parking, the vehicular circulation questions. You can go talk to Parker. Parker has done actually a fair amount of work in Fairfield, and so has got a lot of knowledge about that. And then Zainab and Rory are going to be up here with a community where people come together and an environmentally rooted community. And I am going to be circulating around, stopping at all the different stations. And if you want to just pull me aside and say, hey, I've got a question, you can do so. All right, we've got a fair amount of time. It's 7 o'clock right now. You do not have to stay to the end. You're more than welcome to. But please, circulate around. The most important thing I want you to know is that our staff is here to listen to you. Okay, we want to hear your ideas. You do not feel like the votes are there. They're helpful to give us an indication, but your comments, your thoughts, your ideas are what really matter the most to us. And so talk to us. Give us a chance to listen. We are always open to ideas and suggestions. All right? Oh, yes, and Emmeline there's water, cookies, and somewhere floating around here is Easter candy. If we're not all sick of it already, there's a bunch of Easter candy around here too. So thank you very much for this opportunity to present to you, and please break out and talk to people.
Downtown or the new one? Portions of people's lives, whether they're in the
that's a good question. I feel like the town is,
Yeah, feel free to add in notes you want.
Okay, so they're not made out of concrete, they might be a green roof or, yeah, something that.
Maggie's always like, "Can you pick her up?"
She sent me a nice letter saying that it was a high-end veterinary hospital, and it was yeah. There's so much. Yeah, we don't have. What looked like empty fields.
Obviously, there has to be some loud activity.
And it's really good for that.
Okay, so when you see the gutters up on the roof, thank you. I'm just thinking of
What's up here? How's it going?
Good, how are you? Yeah.
Like commute or go on a 50-mile bumper. I think that's the potential.
Because, I mean, those are really completely opposite goals. I know. Well, this is hard one, though.
Other parts of town. The other thing is,
Traffic lanes look like, should the road include sidewalks? What do you do?
because I just see, we expected, I thought, obviously incorrect, that it came Sandy, that there was going to be some down.